Hello, and welcome to today's episode of the Only Endometriosis podcast you need. Today I'm going to be building on a previous episode where I talked about natural management for endometriosis, and I talked about my 3-step protocol, and I talked about how it is possible to manage endometriosis naturally, looking at this disease, this illness, from a Chinese medicine perspective or an Eastern medicine perspective. I'm just going to embellish a little bit on that podcast. So I just want to start with by reiterating that what I do and people like me, what we do is empower women to take control of health, to take control of symptoms, and to feel better than they were doing, sometimes better altogether. But what we don't do is cure endometriosis. Even in Eastern medicine, there is no known cure for endometriosis. And I'm going to talk a little bit in this episode about my journey. I've asked permission of one of my lovely clients if I can share a little bit of her story as well. And she's granted me permission, which is lovely. So thank you very much. I know you will be listening to this episode. I won't name you, but thank you very much for giving me permission to share a little bit of your story. And I just want to talk about some of the key things to bear in mind if you are thinking about this natural management journey, this natural management process. So learning how to live with endometriosis isn't the same as curing endometriosis, and that is essentially what I do. So I help women, I empower women to learn how to live with endo. And that's not necessarily to say that things can't get better, your symptoms can't improve. 100% of the time, and that is no exaggeration, 100% of the time the women that I work with see reduction in all or most of the actual symptoms they're experiencing. But the symptoms don't necessarily go away altogether. Sometimes we just have to learn to live with them. Learning to live with them is not the same as pretending they're not there. It's not the same as waiting for them to get worse before you tackle them. It's literally living a life that isn't impacted by your endometriosis symptoms. And when I talk about it, it might sound really, really simple, especially when I talk about this 3-step process. The actual reality of a 3-step process is that it isn't just 3 steps, because within those 3 umbrella steps, there are a multitude of different things to think about, tasks to do, and different ways of approaching them. So it's actually really, really complex. And as I mentioned in previous episodes, and as if you've followed me for a while, you'll have heard me talk about before, the way that I work is to help women, to empower women to understand, first of all, why their endometriosis symptoms are there. And I talk about endometriosis, but actually this is transferable to most, if not all, chronic health conditions. So if you can understand why your symptoms are there in the first place, then you can start to take steps to manage them. Again, sounds really simple, doesn't it? And sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. So if we can understand the symptoms that we're experiencing, the ones that are constant, so the ones that are there all the time, why they're there all the time, and then the ones that flare, why they're flaring, what makes them suddenly appear, what makes them disappear, how exactly is our endometriosis manifesting for you as an individual, because everybody's different and every body is different. So why are they there in the first place? Why are they flaring? The thing that I want to talk about today is why this isn't a simple process, and things to keep in mind if you're getting frustrated, anxious, worried, if you're really looking to embark on this journey, but you have worries and doubts as to whether it can be done. I'm going to talk a little bit about why it can be a difficult journey, because when we start, it's the same with any project. When we start, we have that vision. And I always encourage everybody, I sort of say, whenever I start to work with somebody, or when I'm talking to somebody with a view to working with them, I always ask them what they want to get out of working with me. So what is the vision that you have for your life? Now, that goal that you set at the beginning may change. It may change on the first session. It may change halfway through the program. It might well change 2 years down the line. But at the moment, what do you see as your goal and what do you believe is possible? And the reason we do that is twofold. The reason we do that, firstly, is to vision what we want. As with any project, it works better, you see better results if you have that vision, if you always have that thing to mind. And you know that I've talked about this in previous episodes of the podcast before. We also do it so that I can get an understanding of how deep the limiting beliefs or the things that I'm going to talk about today that may prevent you or that may become a hurdle in your healing, in your natural journey, how deep-seated those beliefs, those feelings, those anxieties go. And I'm going to sort of reiterate this at the end, but I want to say from the outset, the key to this natural endometriosis management journey is remembering that we are all human, that this is a process, it's a journey, it isn't a linear journey. It's going to have ups and downs, it's going to have challenges. It's exactly the same as buying a gym membership. If losing weight was easy, then, or getting fit was easy, then all you'd need to do is buy a gym membership and the weight would fall off. It's exactly the same principle. Deciding to control your endometriosis, to manage your endometriosis naturally, is the first step. It's actually quite a big step, exactly the same as joining the gym. It's you deciding to take control, to take more control over your health, over your well-being, over your endometriosis. Because once you believe that you can manage your endometriosis, reduce your symptoms, that's actually probably emotionally speaking, mindset speaking, you're kind of halfway there. And it's funny, I think I've said this before, but quite often when I start working with women, they'll say, do you know what, I've actually felt a lot better ever since I booked in with you. And that's nothing to do with me. I wish I could say, yeah, I'm that good, that people feel better when they start before they start working with me. But it's clearly nothing to do with me. That's because the first step is all about taking control. It's about a little bit of belief. It doesn't matter how small that belief, but that little bit of belief that you're actually going to do something to reduce your symptoms, to feel better. And as soon as you get that little bit of hope, some of your symptoms, bizarrely, start to improve. And I'll go into why that is, but also why it's not just that simple as well. So this lovely client that I've been working with recently, we've literally just signed her off. Actually, we have one more session, apologies, but we finished the 9-week program. She signed up for a 9-week program with me before Christmas. And she was experiencing incredible pain. She got the most pain around her bladder. She'd been diagnosed with endometriosis on her bladder as well as other places. She was getting increasingly frustrated. She'd been seeing a pelvic floor physio, which is fabulous. So she'd already started to take steps to sort of a different approach, if you like. But she was still experiencing incredible pain. Her anxiety levels were peaking. Her health anxiety levels were peaking. And she was really at her wit's end. And I could see from the first time, and I haven't said this is why I'm faltering, I haven't actually said this to her, I don't think. But I could see from that very first call we had so I always, before I start working with somebody, we always have a chat to see if we're a good fit, to see if they want to work with me. It's all about trust at the end of the day. So if that person doesn't trust me, if that person feels a bit iffy about working with me, that's absolutely fine. But I give them a chance to see whether that's going to happen before they commit. And on that very first call, I could see almost like the sadness in her eyes. There was a desperate air of, well, no, not a desperate air, but an air of disappointment, of disbelief almost that it was going to work. And I could see that the most important thing for me when we start any program is to understand exactly how that person, or if that person even believes that their endometriosis can be managed naturally. And I could see that this wonderful client desperately wanted to believe, but she'd been told by so many people, including professionals, that it couldn't be done. That I don't think, well, we know that she just didn't believe it. Her confidence, we always talk about confidence. How confident are you at the beginning of working with me that you can manage your endometriosis symptoms? And just as a quick aside as well, if you are looking, I'm sure I've said this before, but if you are looking to manage your endometriosis or to manage any chronic condition or any symptom even, one of the most powerful things you can do is to score out of 10. So if you always score at the beginning of every, I was going to say project again, but if you score at the beginning of any program, things like if pain is your thing, what's your pain level today? What's the highest your pain got to today? Or what's your average pain today? As long as you're consistent, it doesn't matter how you manage it, how you record it. But what's your pain levels? What's your bloating levels? What's your fatigue levels? What's your energy levels? What's your stress levels? Whatever the symptoms you're experiencing, out of 10, give them a score every day. And at the end, how confident are you out of 10 that you will be able to manage your endometriosis naturally? And it doesn't matter if that score is 0. This is all about tracking. You know what I'm like. This is all about tracking. This is all about a spreadsheet. Track it, track it, track it. What we want to see, the most important score, well, selfishly, the most important score for me as a therapist, as somebody who wants to empower women, is that final score. How confident are you that you can manage your endometriosis? The other scores fluctuate. Well, that score fluctuates as well. The other scores fluctuate. I'll talk about that in a second. The other scores will diminish, which is fabulous because that's the ultimate aim, is that the symptoms reduce. But the real impact is the confidence levels that you are able to manage your endometriosis naturally, because when you have the confidence that you can manage it, so many other things shift. I'm going to talk you through a little bit about that, but why it isn't that simple. So this client came to me, her out of 10 scores for pain were incredibly high, all the other symptoms were incredibly high, her health anxiety was incredibly high, her confidence that she could manage endometriosis was low, despite the fact she desperately wanted to, and she was almost like convincing herself she could. Her confidence was low, and that is normal. That's exactly what tends to happen when I work with somebody. People don't normally come to me thinking, I absolutely can nail this self-management, got this in the bag, don't have any doubts. I would suspect if somebody was that confident, they wouldn't need me, or they certainly wouldn't need my program anyway. They might want to come to me for, I don't know, whatever one-off sessions, but I don't think they need the program, but that's by the by. Most people come to me thinking, yeah, you know what, it would be great if I could. I'm not certain it's going to work for me, but do you know what, I'll give it a try, which is absolutely fine. So fast forward, it hasn't been 9 weeks because we had Christmas in the middle, and I think I was ill for 1 week. So fast forward maybe 12 weeks. And her scores are fabulous. Her pain has decreased massively. Her anxiety has decreased massively. Her health anxiety has decreased massively. Actually, not massively. Her health anxiety has decreased. And that's what I'm going to talk about in a minute. Her menstrual cycles are way healthier than they were. The important thing for me is that she is also way more confident in how she's going to manage it going forward. Or so we thought, until she had a wobble last week. And again, I'm going to talk about this in a second. Has her pain gone completely? No. Have her symptoms gone completely? No. But her confidence that she can identify now what's triggering her pain, what's triggering all of her symptoms, that she can either avoid what triggers them or she can address it once it's triggered, has skyrocketed. So we've gone to like 8 out of 10 for confidence that she can manage things going forward. And that's exactly the same with my own journey. Like I say, if you've been following me for a while, you'll know that I've managed my own endometriosis naturally for 20 plus years. I haven't cured my endometriosis. My endometriosis hasn't gone. I've had flare-ups in all of that time. But the difference is that I know what triggers me. And I know what symptom trigger cycles that I can get into. And that is the key. So when we talk about this client whose health anxiety has improved, it has improved. But this is a really, really important thing and difficult thing in equal measures to remember, to get our heads around, whatever it is that we're trying to battle. It's that feeling that you are completely out of control. When you start on this endometriosis journey, 9 times out of 10, you do feel completely disassociated from your symptoms. You feel completely powerless to do anything about it. And that's what starts to change. However, what can happen, which is exactly what happened with my client last week, might have even been the week before now. Apologies, I can't remember where we are. But what happened with my client last week or the week before was that she had a huge wobble. She started to believe that she was just going to regress. She'd had a taste of what life can be like without her symptoms. She was starting to be able to make the choices, which I'll talk about as well in a second. She was able to decide what to do to either avoid a flare-up or to manage a flare-up if it happened. She was able to make those choices. She'd had a glimpse of what life could be like, and she started to get really, really anxious that things were going to regress, that she was going to go back to the days where she felt completely powerless, where her symptoms were taking control. And that is completely understandable. I'm going to go through 3 points that are essential to bear in mind if you're going to be on this journey. And one of them is the fact that healing isn't linear. We are going to see bumps in the road. The most difficult bumps to overcome are the ones where a symptom is also a trigger, which is also a symptom, which is a trigger, that trigger symptom cycle. So for this particular client, that was her health anxiety. So her health anxiety, she knew, when she came to work with me, she knew that stress was a trigger for her endometriosis. So there was nothing new in identifying this stress. What we hadn't done, or what she hadn't done previously, and again, this is completely normal as well, but what we did together was to identify the different stresses. So she has anxiety sometimes, as we all do, but she also has health anxiety, which again, a lot of people do. We could split that up. So now she can differentiate between anxiety and health anxiety. And whilst that doesn't seem to be a big thing, when you're trying to stop the cycle, the trigger symptom cycle, it's really, really important to know what different anxieties you have, or what are triggering the different anxieties. When your health anxiety is a trigger, it's really, really difficult to overcome this, because your health, you are ill, you do have a chronic health condition. So it's not like something you can say, you can't just reframe health anxiety, because you can't say, I am well, because you are ill. So for you to believe that you're not ill, it's an untruth. And whilst there is an element of untruth in reframing things, whilst you have to believe the opposite of what you currently believe, you're never going to believe you're not poorly, because you do have this label, you do have endometriosis. And it's really, really difficult to convince yourself when you have been in a really bad place that you're not going to end up in that bad place. I talk about healing, and I talk about people's bodies and the body's ability to really, really heal. And we say things like, in my world, we say things like, look, so if we translate this to a knee, we say, look, your knee hasn't always been sore. You haven't always had this knee pain. So what we want to do is to get your knee back to how it was. We want to rediscover that healthy knee. We want to be able to run again without the knee pain. We want to be able to go fell walking without the knee pain. And you can do that because you've been in a place where you can do it. The flip side of that is, if you start thinking like that, you then think, or you can then think, well, hang on, I've been where my pain levels have been 9 or 10 out of 10. I've been where my confidence to manage this is 1 or 2 out of 10. So I'm now anxious that I'm going to end up back there. And all the reframing, all of the mindset work, all of the mantras, all of the affirmations, all of the meditations are actually quite hard to break that cycle. And it's similar to, it isn't just health anxiety that's this kind of deep-seated trigger symptom cycle that's hard to break. With endometriosis, we also get feelings of shame, or we can also get feelings of shame. We can get feelings of guilt, feelings that we are less of a woman. I've worked with women, or I've talked to women who are just so desperate to stop feeling the symptoms that they're feeling, that they just want to cut out the women. And some women do. Some women go off and have hysterectomies or partial hysterectomies, and that's completely understandable. And like I've always said, I am not against surgery. I get why women have surgery, and I get that for some women it's absolutely the right thing to do. But that's almost seen sometimes as a way to break that cycle. Just take it out. I've just had enough. I can't cope with this cycle anymore, because actually breaking the cycles of guilt, breaking the feelings of shame and of feeling that you're less of a woman, or the health anxiety cycle can feel like an insurmountable hurdle. So I completely get it. And like I say, it is the most difficult one to break. The key is, I'm going to say consistency, but it's not necessarily consistency all the time. But the key is to know what things work for you. So when we're looking at anxiety in general, we do look at reframing. It's cognitive behavioural therapy techniques. We look at evidence to tell ourselves why the anxiety isn't real. So for example, for many, many years, I couldn't get in a lift. I'm claustrophobic to some extent anyway, but I just hated lifts. I couldn't get in a lift. And the easiest thing in the world, so if somebody is scared of lifts, you ask them why they're scared of lifts. Well, if I get in a lift and it falls, then, I could be injured. Completely understandable. I was in a lift that fell once. No word of a lie. And this was before I was scared of lifts. Oh, I suppose that makes sense. I was still claustrophobic, but I wasn't particularly scared of lifts at this time. So you'd have thought, so that the reframing hadn't worked for me because I hadn't done it properly, I suppose. But so reframing it for somebody who hasn't been in a lift that's fallen, you kind of say, well, what are the chances of the lift falling? I've been in lifts hundreds of times, they haven't fallen, so chances are the lift isn't going to fall, I am safe. And then that's simplifying it slightly, but you see where I'm coming from. You reframe that belief. You look for the evidence where your belief isn't real. You reframe it. You come up with an alternative belief. So the lift isn't going to fall. And that's your new belief. You look for evidence to support that new belief, and that becomes your belief. So you find it easier. You're able to get into a lift because you believe that lift isn't going to fall, rather than believing that it might do. My belief in that lift falling was harder to shift because I couldn't say, well, the evidence says to me that the lift isn't going to fall, because I'd been in a lift where the cable had actually broken. Sorry to anybody who's slightly scared of lifts. It's a very, 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 very rare occurrence. But the beautiful thing was the lift did fall and the reserve cable did exactly what the reserve cable is supposed to do. The reserve cable kicked in and we were all absolutely fine. It was, at worst, probably a bit of a jolt when it came to a stop. And it was quite scary. But everybody was fine. There was no injury. The lifts are designed with that fail-safe thing in. So it's easy now to reframe because I got the reframing journey correctly. It's easier for me to say, well, even if it does fall, there is a reserve that kicks in. There's things underneath as well that kick in. It's safe even if it falls. But had I not understood the depth of or had the person that I was working with not understood the depth of my fear or the reasons behind my fear, then that normal reframe, in inverted commas, that reframe of chances are it isn't going to fall, would never have worked because I had experienced it. In my experience, chances are it was going to fall because I'd already done it. Once that experience was out there, once I understood the depth of that belief that it could fall, I was then able to reframe it using new evidence. And it then becomes even if it does, the evidence is that I will still be safe, I will be unharmed, because none of us were even hurt remotely in that incident. So when we get things like shame, when we get things like guilt, when we get things like this health anxiety, to reframe it is actually really, really difficult because the evidence on the face of it looks as if it backs up your fear. So the fear of, hang on, I could be at a 1 out of 10 for confidence. I could be at a 10 out of 10 for pain because I've already been there. So I can just easily put myself back in that situation. However, with this client, just to use her example again, thank you. With this client, she has the tools. So she sends me lovely voice notes. So when you're working with me on a program, you can contact me in between sessions. We have free-flowing conversation. We use voice notes, however you want to do it. This client leaves me voice notes on WhatsApp. And she used to leave me voice notes where it was, I don't know if I can do this. I'm really worried that I'm going to not be able to do it. I can see my scores are changing. I was a a 4 where I was an 8 yesterday, but I'm feeling more of a 5, a 6, a 7 today, and I'm not seeing improvements every day. Now she's leaving me voice notes saying, well, up until the wobble, she was leaving me voice notes saying, do you know what, I've had a really bad day today. I'm on a 7 today, but I've looked back at my tracker, I've looked back at my notes, and I've done this, and I've ended the day on a 3. My confidence is a 9 because I know that I can do this. But she had a wobble the other day, like I say, and she was absolutely convinced that things were going to get bad again. She'd had a bad day. She was absolutely convinced that she was going to regress. But the difference was, and I was going to say the funny thing, it isn't a funny thing when you're in that anxious space, or whatever space it is pertinent to you. When you're in that space, it isn't a happy place to be. It isn't funny. But even in her message, she's put to me, and I know why it happened. I'd had a really stressful day the day before. I'd worked long hours. I was anxious about A, B, C, and D. So I know why it was flaring, but I'm just really worried that it's not going to get any better. I know I should be doing A, B, and C because that'll make me feel better. I just can't face it. I just can't do it. And literally all she needed from me was a bit of a hug, a virtual hug, and just to say, do you know what? Reread your message. You know why it triggered. You know what you can do to alleviate the symptoms. And this is the key thing. You've got a choice now. You can choose if you want to ride it out, because you know if you don't do the things that are going to make you feel good, you know how the next 2 days are going to be. But you have a choice. You have the tools in your toolkit to be able to say, do you know what, tonight I'm going to do the stomach massage, or I'm going to do the meditation, or I'm going to do the aromatherapy bath that I know helps me, so I am going to feel better in the morning. Or you can choose to say, do you know what, I am just so tired, I'm just going to go to bed and ride it out and see what happens tomorrow. The difference is you've got that choice, and even having that choice makes your confidence, makes your ability to manage your endometriosis so much better, so much stronger. And that's what we're all about. When we come to talking about natural management, it's about having the tools, having the power, and having the choice to decide whether you want to manage your endometriosis at the minute. So I've had a year, just to talk about my journey a little bit, I've had a year of conflicting things. I've had a fabulous, for those of you who followed me for a while, you will know that I've had a fabulous 18 months in my personal life. It's been amazing. But on the self-care front, I've been shocking. I've had something that has been incredibly triggering for me. Despite all the fabulous things that have happened, I've had something that's been really triggering for me this last year. And my self-care has gone downhill massively. I have not looked after myself at all. I have not done the movement that I've needed to do. I've put weight on, all of the stuff that I know is really bad for me. And sure enough, my menstrual cycle has shifted. I've gone from 28 days on the dot to, I think my shortest one was 19 days a couple of cycles ago. Could well be perimenopause, but it isn't. I know fine well it isn't. It's because I've not been looking after myself. I've chosen not to do stuff. I've felt despondent at times. I've felt like I wanted to have a bag of mini eggs for lunch, and to hell with the consequences. I've made those choices because, well, for whatever reason, I've not had the energy, or I've just thought, do you know what, I'm actually just going to enjoy my endometriosis. I'm going to enjoy just wallowing for a couple of days, because I know that when I've had enough, I can pick myself back up. And these are the 3 things that I want you to remember if you're considering this journey. I'm going to start actually with the third one that I've written down, but healing isn't linear. It's okay to take what feels like a backward step, because it isn't a backward step. You are never, and this is really important to believe this, you are never going to be back where you were. Because even if you have, like I've had a bad year, my symptoms are nowhere near as bad. Now, it might feel on the odd day where I have a lot of pain at the minute, it might feel like I've regressed, but I haven't regressed. Okay, my pain level might be 7, But when I think back to the level of pain I have experienced in my past, that was excruciating pain. And my 7 today is probably, I don't know, might have given it maybe a 5 back in the day when my symptoms were rife. I will never be back where I was because I have the tools. Even if I choose not to use them I haven't not used them for a full year, but even if I make choices regularly not to use a few of them for a year, I am never going to be back where I was when my symptoms were bad originally, when I had my original diagnosis back all those years ago. So I'm never going to be back there because I've now got the tools. The same with this client. She realised that actually she has got the tools. Even in the message to me, she said, I know that I should be doing A, B, C, and D, but I just can't face doing them. But that's absolutely fine. You don't need to do them. You have a choice. And you know that if you don't, exactly as I've been doing, I haven't been making the best choices. I haven't been making the healthiest choices. But I've always known in the back of my head, I've always had that confidence that actually when it gets too bad, when I reach my trigger point for saying, no, this is ridiculous, I need to stop eating mini eggs for lunch, I need to stop doing X, Y, and Z, because actually I'm getting to a level now where, it is maybe starting to impact a little bit more, I'm going to change things around. That's exactly what you can do. You've got the control, you've got the power, you've got the understanding. And like I say, healing isn't linear. So you are going to have, when you start off, you're going to have maybe mornings, afternoons where you feel great, mornings, afternoons where you feel dreadful. You're going to be mornings, afternoons where you're 8 out of 10 in pain, but then other mornings you're going to have, either mornings or afternoons, you're going to have 3 out of 10 pain. And that is going to be quite spiky in the early days. That is because your symptoms are kind of reacting to the natural processes that you're doing, but also your awareness of them is quite acute as well. But those times will get less and less. So those spikes will get less and less the longer you do it. And I sort of say about consistency, you don't have to do things all of the time, but the more you do this stuff, the easier it gets. So I, like I say, I can go for years and years without having any symptoms, without having any issues at all. Life gets in the way. Something will happen to make me think, oh, hang on, I need to just maybe do this for a week. You maybe need to step on this even harder for a couple of days, and then it'll be fine. Sometimes you get flared, and you know that you need to do it for a bit longer. It's fine. Accepting that, acknowledging that, but having that power to choose when to do something about it is the absolute key thing. So the first thing that I was going to say, which is now obviously the second, is that you have a chronic condition. Endometriosis is a chronic, debilitating condition. And it doesn't matter really what grade you have, what stage you have. The symptoms that you can experience can be debilitating at any stage, grade, even before you have that diagnosis. Western doctors can't give us a cure. Western medicine can't even guarantee us long-term, medium-term respite from our symptoms. So it's really important. I'm not saying this to give you doom and gloom. I'm not saying this to reinforce that message that you're never going to feel better, because you can feel better. I'm living proof. My clients are living proof. You can feel better. I'm saying this as just a reminder, possibly about expectations, but also about the fact that this is a journey. This is an absolute journey of time, of energy, of commitment, of knowledge, of learning and understanding. Quite often I work with people who have literally no experience of Eastern alternative natural medicine, call it what you want, functional medicine. Sometimes people do, and it can be easier to work with people who have existing knowledge. It can be not easy. It doesn't really necessarily matter. But the thing to remember is that this way of looking at endometriosis, this long-term view, this natural management, is a lifestyle. It doesn't have to be a restrictive lifestyle. It doesn't have to be something that is going to impact negatively on you at all, but it's definitely a journey. It's not a quick fix. And although I advertise my 12-week program, I do 9-week programs, 6-week programs, completely flexible, depending on what that vision, what that outcome that you want is. You're not going to feel better with a capital B. You're not going to feel cured, to use that word. You're not going to feel free of your symptoms at the end of the program. It isn't a quick fix. At the end of the program, you will have the tools you need to manage your endometriosis long into the future. You will have the tools you need to enable you to make the decision about how and when you do the things that are going to make you feel better. And at the end of the program, you will be able to say, my confidence to manage my endometriosis naturally is 8 out of 10, rather than 2 out of 10. It's a foundation. It's a beautiful building block for an endometriosis-free life, but it is a journey. It is something that you need to commit to. And you don't have to commit to it 100% all the time. It's exactly the same, like I said right at the beginning of this podcast, it's exactly the same as a gym membership. The decision to manage your endometriosis naturally, the decision to sign up to a program like mine or to work with somebody like me and then doing the program, this is all the first steps. Joining the gym and doing your 4-week induction or whatever it is the foundation of the process. It's then up to you, and I feel such a hypocrite saying this because this is exactly what I've not done for the last year, but it is then up to you to make the decision to put your trainers on and to go for the run, or to put your trainers on and go to the gym. That's the bit that you will feel empowered or more empowered to do, because you will have the knowledge to do it. So the last thing to remember is that if you are on this journey, no matter what your journey looks like, whether you want to manage your symptoms naturally, whether you just want to go to somebody to have Reiki or to have acupuncture, whatever it is your therapy of choice, the key, or one of the keys, is to remember that you are human. We are all human beings. As well as this journey and not being linear, our energy levels, our hormonal balances, our personality traits, our energy levels, whatever, I might have said that already, but whatever it is that we're experiencing that day isn't linear. We're not linear beings. We're not simple creatures. We have quirks, we have self-destruct tendencies, we have laziness, we have stubbornness, we have life gets in the way, we have conflicting priorities. You may also have suffered trauma in the past, which can make that resistance to change even more, even stronger. It can really impact on those sort of self-destruct behaviours. It can really impact on things like your feeling of worthiness in order to live an endometriosis-free life, a pain-free life. So much to unpick. You can also be neurodiverse as well, which can have a massive impact on not necessarily your ability, but on your on the way that you attack, for want of a better word, which is not a very gentle word, is it? But it can have a massive impact or a massive shift in the way that you approach, better word, this journey. And when we talk about things like shifting mindsets, when we talk about reframing things, if you're struggling with past trauma, if you're struggling with neurodiversity, then that can be even more complex. And we look at every area of somebody's life when we look at endometriosis, because as you know from previous podcasts, emotional trauma can trigger, cause, be a symptom of endometriosis. So that's another cycle. If you struggle with past trauma, if you struggle with ADHD or any sort of neurodiversity, then that can make this journey even more, not necessarily actually even more complex, but it's something, it goes back to the lift scenario. Without understanding the impact of the trauma, without understanding the impact of your neurodiversity, without addressing the impact of your trauma, without addressing the neurodiversity, then your chances of success on this journey are shifted. So we need to look at everything. We need to remember that we're complex creatures, that we have all of these things going on in the background, and that you need to be gentle with yourself. So I know that sometimes I can be really hard on myself. I ate mini eggs for lunch. Still clearly cut up about this. I'm still annoyed with myself, and I shouldn't be, because I really enjoyed those mini eggs. So make choices that are good, not just for your physical health, but make them in the knowledge that you will have the confidence, you will have the tools and the ability to change whatever impact comes from making, in inverted commas, poor decisions. So we talked about health anxiety with my client. She has all the tools she needs. It's just so difficult sometimes to actually do it. But like I say, the more you use tools, the more you tell yourself you can do it, the more you do the things that you know are good for you, the easier they get. It can feel like such an uphill struggle at the beginning, but the more you do them, the less triggers you will start to feel, the less symptoms you will start to feel, and very soon it will come to a perfect storm of goodness. So you're not doing the things that trigger your endometriosis, so your endometriosis gets better, you have less triggers, you have less symptoms, and that trigger symptom cycle starts to actually be part of your healing journey, because it starts to heal each other. So if you're considering starting this journey, if you're looking to integrate more natural alternative practices into your things, I hope into your life, into your endometriosis care, then I hope this podcast has helped a little bit today. It's okay to have, I don't know what the word I'm going to use is. I was going to say failings, but that's kind of a judgment call. It's okay to make decisions that you know aren't going to be in your long-term best interest all the time. It's especially okay to do that if you know that you have the tools at some point to turn around and say, do you know what? It's time that I actually took control back. It's time that I made the decision to do things that are going to make me feel better. That healing isn't linear, and now I realise that I can and will make a decision this morning that actually I'm going to feel better today. I'm going to have an 8 out of 10 control day rather than a 2 out of 10 control day. I'm going to have a 2 out of 10 pain day rather than an 8 out of 10 pain day. So I hope that helps. If you are on the journey and feeling like you're regressing, look back over your journals, look back over your scores. Tell yourself, remind yourself all you've learned. I talk a lot about, especially in the self-treatment programs, I use a lot of reflection tools. When you reflect on how far you've come, it's impossible for you to say that you're regressing. Because yes, okay, you might have a bad day, but when you look at how you were, it's impossible to say that you're as bad as you were then if you're doing all of the things, not even all of the time. So have a half-hour reflection time, sit and think about how far you've come. Congratulate yourself on coming that far. Pick yourself up gently. No recrimination, no guilt, no blame, no shame. Gently pick yourself up. Make the decision to do things differently. Make a different decision today. And then talk to yourself as you would talk to your best friend. Tell yourself it's okay. You've completely got this. You are able to do all of the things you're worrying about. Talk to yourself as you would a good friend, and start by taking a small step forward or a small step forward again. Remind yourself that a small step forward is still a step forward. It's still a step in the right direction. So I hope this helps. Again, if you have any questions or comments, please do let me know. If you'd like to work with me, then please do get in touch. I'm running out of spaces actually for one-to-ones, but we still have the self-treatment programs as well, which you get the same outcomes from, and they're actually brilliant if you prefer your own space, if you like to work through things in your own way. They are perfect as well. So do get in touch. I look forward to hearing from you, or just thank you for listening in your own quiet way. I appreciate you all.